When a man robs a gas station, Chen appears, and what he does next will leave you speechless. It all happened at the Mayberry Filling Station at 9 p.m. Cars were headed home, and the gas station was nearly empty. Peter Jenkins, a man down on his luck, pulled his hoodie over his head and walked toward the station's entrance. He had spent the last few days thinking about this moment. He needed money, and he needed it fast. His little brother, Williams, needed the money for surgery. He wasn't proud of it, but desperation left him no choice. Unknown to Peter, that night would be one he would never forget. The cashier, a tired-looking teenager named Anthony, barely looked up when Peter entered. Peter hesitated for a second before pulling out a small pistol from his pocket. He pointed it at the register, his voice and hands shaking as he demanded the money. Anthony's hands trembled as he opened the register, ready to give Peter all the money. Peter grabbed the cash, stuffed it into his jacket, and turned to leave. Before he could step out, the door swung open. A man stood there in black shorts and a gray hoodie. It was Chen. Peter froze. Anthony blinked in disbelief. Jackie stepped forward, scanning the scene. He noticed the cash in Peter's hand and the fear in Anthony's eyes. He sighed, shaking his head. Jackie could tell all that had happened. Peter considered running, but Jackie moved before he could make that decision. Jackie kicked a nearby display rack in a blur, sending a tray of energy drinks flying. Peter bent over, startled. He fired a shot, but Jackie twisted mid-air, dodging easily. The bullet shattered a soda bottle instead. "Call the cops," Jackie said calmly. Anthony, who was still surprised by the scene in front of him, immediately dialed the emergency line. Peter crawled towards the exit, hoping to escape, but soon sirens began to wail. "You don't have to do this," Jackie said to him in a calm voice. Peter looked up at him. "What do you know about it?" "I know what desperation looks like, but this isn't the way," Jackie answered. The police entered. Officers rushed in, guns drawn. Peter's shoulders slumped as they grabbed his arms, pulling him to his feet. He didn't fight them. The cash spilled onto the floor as he was handcuffed. Anthony let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. Jackie stepped back, letting the officers do their job. One of them glanced at him and did a double take. "Wait, aren't you?" Jackie gave a small smile but didn't answer. He turned toward the door, opening it wide as the officers led Peter into the vehicle. Peter was led out with his head bent forward. As he passed Jackie, he hesitated. "You don't understand." Jackie met his eyes. "Then tell me." Peter swallowed hard. He glanced at the officers, then at Jackie. "My brother, he's sick. I had no other way." Jackie studied him for a moment. The officers pulled Peter toward the car, but Jackie called out, "Wait!" As they stopped, Jackie walked over to Peter. "What's wrong with your brother?" "Heart condition," Peter said. "He needs surgery." Jackie exhaled, looking at the officers. "Let me talk to him." One of them, recognizing Jackie, hesitated before nodding. They loosened their grip on Peter's arm slightly. Jackie led Peter a few steps away. "You made a mistake," Jackie said, "but maybe I can help." Peter's brows furrowed. "Why?" Jackie shrugged. "Because someone helped me once, and everyone deserves a second chance. I can tell you're not a bad guy, but someone who got desperate." The officers led Peter into the car. Jackie watched as they drove off, then turned to Anthony. The cashier still looked dazed. Jackie asked Anthony if he was okay. He nodded to show that he was. Surprised at the mess in front of him, he questioned whether that had just happened. Jackie chuckled and confirmed that it had. Anthony ran a hand through his hair. Jackie picked up a bag of chips from the shelf, tossed a few bills onto the counter, and walked out into the night. The sirens faded in the distance. The gas station once again became quiet. The flashing red and blue lights lit up the gas station as the police arrived. Peter didn't fight back when they grabbed him. It was pointless. The shaken store clerk pointed him out, and that was all the officers needed. They cuffed him and took him to the patrol car. As they drove, Peter stared out the window, his mind racing. He had tried to help, but now Williams was still in trouble, and he was the one facing charges. The officer in the passenger seat glanced back and said, "Robbery's a serious charge." While looking through his notes, Peter remained silent. At the police station, everything was routine. They took his fingerprints and asked him questions he barely processed, then took his mugshot under bright lights. His charges were read, and soon after, he was taken to a holding cell. The door slammed shut behind him. Sitting alone on a metal bench, Peter felt the weight of the situation. He wondered if explaining himself earlier would have made a difference, but he knew that anyone would believe him. Time passed slowly until he heard footsteps and looked up. A guard stood by the bars and said to him, "You have a visitor." Jackie appeared with hands in pockets, expression unreadable. Jackie just studied him quietly, and somehow, that made Peter feel just a little less alone. He didn't know what to expect. Pity? Condemnation? But Jackie only looked thoughtful, and his appearance calmed his nerves. What happened next will leave you shocked. "I got your name from the officers, and I looked into your brother's case," Jackie said. "His surgery is scheduled for next month, but your family can't afford it." Peter swallowed, nodding. Jackie continued, "You made a mistake, but I don't think you're a bad person, so I want to help." Peter frowned. "Why? Why would you help someone who almost hurt you?" Jackie leaned against the bars. "Because I know what it's like to feel like the world is against you, and I believe in second chances. I don't deserve this. I broke the law. I put that kid at risk. What if you hadn't shown up?" Peter said with tears in his eyes. Jackie shook his head. "Maybe not, but your brother does." Peter looked away, emotions narrowing his throat. Jackie placed a card on the bench. "This is a lawyer who can help with your case." Then he held out a check. "This is to cover your brother's surgery." As if that was not enough, he brought out a card and handed it to him. "This is my number. Call me when this is all over." Peter stared at it. "I can't take that." "You can, and you will," Jackie firmly responded. Tears stung Peter's eyes as he held the card. He had spent so long fighting, scraping for anything to help his brother that he never expected kindness to come from a stranger, let alone Jackie Chan. Jackie turned toward the door. "Do better, Peter." Peter nodded, gripping the check. "I will." Peter sat in the cell, his fingers tracing the edges of the check Jackie had left him. He was in awe. How had this night taken such a turn? One moment, he was pointing a gun at a terrified cashier. The next, a world-famous martial artist was offering him a lifeline, a chance to save his brother's life. Peter exhaled deeply, gripping the check tighter. He knew the money could save his brother, but what would happen to him? Would he be locked away before he could even see his little brother again? Peter hesitated before reaching for the card Jackie had left him. He read the name, Samuel Odell, criminal defense attorney. Peter swallowed hard, emotions threatening to spill over. He had spent so long feeling like the world had nothing left for him. Yet here was a stranger offering help with no conditions, no judgment, just hope. Das passed, and Peter's case moved quickly. Samuel Odell proved to be just as competent as Jackie had promised. He built Peter's defense around his desperation and clean record, highlighting his devotion to his sick brother. The prosecution pushed for jail time, but Samuel fought for leniency. During the trial, William's condition worsened, and Peter was granted a supervised visit to the hospital. Seeing his little brother hooked up to machines nearly shattered him. The kid was barely 12, his eyes were sunken, and his skin had grown pale. "Peter?" William's voice was weak but audible. Peter sat beside the bed, gripping his brother's hand. "Yeah, buddy, I'm here." Peter held his brother's hands as he promised him that he'd right his wrongs. 2 weeks later, the verdict was in. The judge sentenced Peter to 1 year of community service and mandatory rehabilitation instead of jail time. Jackie was in the courtroom, watching quietly from the back. When the sentence was read, Peter turned to meet Jackie's eyes. The gratitude in his gaze said everything words couldn't. Months passed. Peter worked at a shelter, helping people who had hit rock bottom just like he once had. He stayed out of trouble, checked in on Williams every day, and attended therapy. Slowly, he built a life that didn't involve desperation or crime. It had been 3 months since the trial, and he was still adjusting to life outside a cell. The work was tedious, but honest. He owed that much to Williams. His brother was recovering, and the surgery was a success. That was all that mattered. His job at a local supermarket helped him keep up with his brother's medical expenses. One evening, as Peter stacked canned goods in the pantry, his phone buzzed. He hesitated before answering. It was Jackie. He asked how the shelter and his job were treating him. Peter answered as he expressed his profound gratitude to him for helping him get his life back together. Jackie encouraged him to drop by the community center. Little did he know that Jackie had a plan. At the community center, Peter saw kids sparring in a makeshift boxing ring. Jackie explained it was a youth outreach program to keep kids off the streets and give them discipline and purpose. Peter hesitated, unsure he was the right guy. Jackie insisted, saying Peter understood the struggle and that kids would listen to him. Peter watched a boy no older than Williams fumble a stance. Maybe Jackie was right. Weeks passed, and Peter settled into his new role, training kids and talking to them about choices and consequences. It wasn't easy, but he felt like he was doing something that mattered. Jackie then mentioned he had another opportunity for Peter, one that would allow him to build a future beyond just volunteering. He had connections at a local sports facility looking for trainers, and they were willing to take a chance on Peter. It would be stable work with a real paycheck. Peter hesitated. A part of him still felt unworthy of something permanent, but Jackie reminded him that people believed in him, including Williams, who was growing stronger every day. Peter agreed. He applied for the position and after an interview was hired. The first day felt surreal, stepping into a world where he wasn't just getting by but moving forward. Meanwhile, Williams's condition steadily improved. The doctors were optimistic, and Peter visited him often, bringing stories from the gym. Williams smiled more now, his body gaining strength, his future no longer as uncertain. Peter found peace in knowing his brother had a real chance at life. Still, there was unfinished business. One evening, Peter found himself standing outside the gas station he had once robbed. His heart pounded as he stepped inside. Anthony, the attendant, froze when he saw him. There was wariness in his eyes, the memory of that night still fresh. "I came to apologize," Peter said, his voice steady but low. "I made mistakes. You didn't deserve what happened." Anthony studied him for a long moment and asked him if he had gotten a job. "Yes," Peter replied. "Training kids, trying to do some good," he answered. Anthony shook his hands firmly and encouraged him to use the opportunity wisely. Peter left feeling lighter. The past couldn't be changed, but maybe, just maybe, he could shape the future into something better. Peter left the gas station that night with more than just Jackie Chan's help. He left with hope. Hope that maybe, just maybe, his life isn't over. But hope was fragile, and in the weeks that followed, Peter struggled with the weight of his choices, but he knew that he had the right thing. Williams's surgery had been successful, but Peter still had to prove himself. His community service at the shelter was exhausting, not just physically but emotionally. He saw reflections of his past in the people he served, the desperate, the lost, the ones who thought the world had abandoned them. But the world hadn't abandoned Peter. Jackie hadn't abandoned him. One evening, after finishing his shift at the shelter, Peter received another call from Jackie. "How's the shelter treating you?" Jackie asked. Peter sighed, wiping sweat from his brow. "It's tough. Hard seeing people in situations like mine. Feels like I don't know, like I don't deserve to be here, helping them." Jackie was silent for a moment before he spoke. Jackie encouraged him that he was needed and that people needed him. "These people need someone who understands, someone who's been there," Jackie said, encouraging him. Peter leaned against a street lamp, watching the city lights flicker. He shared his fear with Jackie, as he was bothered about not being the right person for the job. "But I have something else in mind," Jackie said. "You remember the community center?" Peter remembered the kids sparring in the makeshift boxing ring. "Yeah, I want you to come by tomorrow," Jackie said. "I think you'll like what I have planned." Peter hesitated but eventually agreed. He wasn't sure where Jackie was leading him, but he had already seen what one moment of trust in the martial artist had done for his life. Maybe it was time for another. The next day, Peter arrived at the Mayberry Community Center and was immediately met with the sounds of laughter, sneakers squeaking on the floor, and gloves hitting punching bags. Jackie stood near the boxing ring, watching a young boy practice his stance. When he saw Peter, he waved him over. Peter looked around at the kids. Some were focused, training hard, but others were goofing off, throwing sloppy punches in the air. Jackie gestured toward the ring. He pointed at a few kids and shared with Peter that they needed his guidance. Some of them come from rough homes. Some are on the verge of going down the wrong path. I want you to help them. Peter exhaled. It was one thing to accept help. It was another to be the one offering it. But then he saw a boy, no older than Williams, standing in the corner of the gym, his fists clenched, his face tense. He recognized that look. It was the look of someone about to make the wrong choice. Peter sighed, promising to give it a shot. Jackie clapped him on the back. "Good. I knew you would." Peter didn't expect to love training the kids, but as weeks passed, he found himself invested in their progress. He saw himself in Miguel, a 15-year-old who had been caught stealing but wanted to turn his life around. He saw himself in Dante, a young lad who was struggling with an abusive stepfather. And he saw himself in Caleb, the quiet one who always stayed late, never saying much, but whose punches carried more pain than power. Peter took each of them under his wing, teaching them not just about boxing but about life. He told them his story, about Williams, about the gas station, about Jackie, and they listened. Jackie saw the change in Peter. The once lost man now had a purpose, and it didn't go unnoticed. One evening, after practice, Jackie approached Peter. Jackie praised Peter for his good work and expressed pride in him. Peter reacted with disbelief, remarking that he never expected to hear that from Jackie Chan. Jackie, with a grin, encouraged Peter to get used to it because he had another opportunity for him. Peter, feeling apprehensive, questioned whether there was yet another chance. Jackie explained that a sports facility downtown was looking for trainers and was willing to take a chance on him. This news made Peter's stomach tighten as he considered the possibility of a real, permanent job. He confessed to Jackie that he was uncertain and worried about the possibility of messing things up. Jackie looked him in the eye and reassured him that if he made a mistake, he would learn from it and try again. After taking a deep breath, Peter nodded and agreed to take the opportunity. As Peter settled into his new job, he also continued his work at the community center. The kids he trained had also started to change. Miguel stayed out of trouble. Dante found confidence, and Caleb even began to smile. But it wasn't just the kids. The community started noticing Peter's efforts. Parents came to him, thanking him for keeping their kids off the streets. A local reporter wrote an article about the youth program. Still, that wasn't the end for Peter. Peter's name became known, not as the man who had once pointed a gun at a cashier, but as the man who helped turn lives around. He and Jackie started expanding the community center program, reaching more kids and offering more opportunities. One day, Peter was in the gym when Jackie approached him with an envelope. Peter asked what it was. Jackie, smiling, encouraged him to open it. When he did, he found himself momentarily speechless. He had received a sponsorship deal from a local company, and they were interested in having him lead the boxing program. Tears welled up in Peter's eyes as he reflected on how close he had come to losing everything. Yet now he was on the verge of creating something meaningful. As he took in the bustling gym, watching the kids spar and hearing their laughter, he felt a vast sense of possibility. At that moment, Peter realized he was no longer just surviving, he was truly living. All it had taken was a second chance. Peter stood in the middle of the gym, the sponsorship letter still held in his hands. The weight of what it meant settled over him. He had spent so long struggling to survive, but now, for the first time, he was in a position to create something lasting. Not just for himself, but for others. Jackie watched him, waiting for a reaction. When Peter finally looked up, his eyes were filled with a mixture of disbelief and gratitude. He tried to find the right words, but all he could manage was a quiet, This is real?" Jackie chuckled, crossing his arms. "It's as real as you make it. This is your chance to do something bigger than yourself," he said. The following days were busy for Peter. He met with the sponsors, who were excited to help him grow the youth boxing program. They offered money for better equipment, more training sessions, and scholarships for promising kids. This support was more than he had ever expected. Determined to make the most of it, Peter threw himself into the work. He sat down with Jackie and a few other mentors to map out a plan. They expanded their outreach, going into schools, community centers, and even juvenile facilities to talk to at-risk youth. Peter knew firsthand how easy it was to fall into desperation, and he wanted to reach kids before they made the mistakes he had. Word of Peter's work spread beyond the community. More kids started showing up at the gym, eager to train, not just in boxing, but in discipline, resilience, and self-worth. Parents who had once worried about their children getting into trouble now saw them finding purpose within the walls of the gym. What happened next will leave you thrilled. As the program grew, Peter realized that boxing was just the beginning. The kids needed more than just a place to train. They needed opportunities. With Jackie's help, he began reaching out to local businesses, convincing them to offer apprenticeships and part-time jobs. Some of the older boys started working at auto shops, grocery stores, and restaurants, earning money and gaining valuable skills. Peter felt a pride he had never experienced before as he watched everything happen. For years, he believed the world had nothing good for him, but now he was creating something real and lasting. One afternoon, while finishing a training session, he saw a familiar face at the gym entrance. It was Anthony, the cashier from the gas station. Peter's stomach twisted. They had spoken once before, but there was still an unspoken tension between them. Anthony stepped forward with his hands in his pockets and mentioned that he had heard about what Peter was doing, expressing that it was impressive as he observed the kids training in the ring. After studying Peter for a moment, Anthony exhaled and told Peter that he had already made amends. He also told him that he wasn't looking for an apology. He just wanted to know if Peter needed another volunteer. Peter was surprised. He didn't expect this. "You want to help?" he asked. Anthony nodded. "Yes, I do. That night was really scary for me, but I realized it wasn't just about me. If I can help other kids avoid that situation, then I want to," he answered. Peter smiled and extended his hand. After a brief pause, Anthony shook it. The program continued to grow. Peter made sure that every dollar from the sponsorship went directly to improving the gym and the kids' lives. They upgraded the equipment, brought in guest trainers, and even organized a community boxing tournament. The event was a turning point. Families gathered to watch their kids compete, local businesses donated prizes, and for the first time in a long time, the neighborhood felt alive with hope. As Peter stood at the edge of the ring, watching the match unfold, he felt a presence beside him. He turned to find Jackie standing there, arms crossed, a proud smile on his face. "You did well," Jackie said. Peter exhaled, shaking his head. He thanked Jackie for believing in him and supporting him. Jackie shrugged and assured him that the decision to change was solely his. Peter smiled as he watched the match. At that moment, he realized that all it had taken was a 1-second chance.